Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter Biodiversity and Conservation. This is the part 4 of the lecture. And this is the disclaimer. So let's discuss the objectives of today's session. So first we will be discussing the importance of conserving biodiversity for maintaining ecological balance and human survival. So this ecosystem and the biodiversity, this is very important to maintain the balance in the ecosystem. Okay. And the biodiversity is also very important for human survival as well. So we'll talk about this. Next, we will analyze the impact of human activities on biodiversity and how it leads to loss of the species. We'll also identify the role of conservation strategies and policies in protecting biodiversity. Now, last objective will be to examine the ethical and economical reasons for why we should conserve and practice sustainable living. So today we'll be talking about biodiversity conservation, which is NCERT section 3.13.2. Within this topic, we'll be talking about why should we conserve biodiversity. We'll also talk about how do we conserve biodiversity, what are the strategies by which we can conserve biodiversity. Then we will summarize the entire session. We'll also discuss some NCERT-based questions, which are based on these topics. We'll also discuss some keynotes that will help you memorize these topics. In the end, there will be some interesting questions that will enhance your critical thinking ability. So let's start with today's session. First, we will be talking about why should we conserve biodiversity. What is the need to conserve biodiversity? Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the reasons for biodiversity conservation. So these, you can say, reasons can be divided into 3 categories. Okay, here, so first one is narrow utilitarian. Okay, we'll talk about narrow utilitarian. What does it consist of? Next one is broadly utilitarian, and next one is the ethical argument. So all of these, you can say, arguments for conservation of biodiversity can be grouped into these categories. What are these categories? Narrow utilitarian, broadly utilitarian, and ethical arguments. Okay, we'll discuss about each one of them in detail. Okay, remember, these are the arguments for conservation of biodiversity. So all the arguments related to conserving biodiversity, that has been grouped into these categories: narrow utilitarian, broadly utilitarian, and ethical arguments. Okay, so let's first talk about the narrow utilitarian arguments. So this basically focuses on the practical benefits human gain from nature. Okay, so here you can see a direct economic benefits from the nature refers to tangible financial gains that humans receive directly from natural resources and ecosystem. Let's have a look at the examples of such economic benefits that we gain from nature. Okay, so food, cereals, and foods such as cereal, pulses, and fruits, we get it from nature. We are selling these food products as well. Next, firewood, fiber, and construction materials are examples of how plants are used by humans for various purposes. Firewood is used for cooking and heating. Fiber from plant like cotton or jute is used to make clothes and ropes. And construction materials such as wood and bamboo are used to build houses and other structures. Okay, next, industrial products like tannins, lubricants, dyes, resins, and perfumes are derived from plants and are used in various industries. Tannins are used in leather tanning. Lubricants reduce friction in machinery. Dyes provide colors to the fabrics. Resins, they are used in adhesives and coatings, and perfumes are made from aromatic plant extract. So these products highlight the importance of plants in industrial application. Next one is medicine. So many medicines today come from plants, and about 25% of the drugs sold worldwide are made from plant sources. Now, many plants, around 25,000 species, are used in traditional medicines by different communities around the world. These plants have been used for centuries to treat various health issues, and they often contain chemicals that help heal or prevent diseases. Now, there is a term bioprospecting. So, this is a very important term. Okay, let's understand what do you mean by bioprospecting. So, basically, bioprospecting is the process of searching for useful molecules or genes or species in the nature that can be used to create products that are valuable to humans, like medicines, pesticides, or industrial chemicals. So basically, bioprospecting is exploring the molecular, genetic, and species level diversity. So there is diversity at every level. Okay. So there is diversity at molecular level, genetic level, as well as at the species level as well. We want to explore this diversity for products of economic importance. So we want to create products using this biodiversity. Okay. And these products are valuable to humans, like medicines, pesticide, or industrial chemicals. Okay. Now, the nations with rich biodiversity can expect to reap enormous benefits because diverse ecosystems provide essential resources like food, medicine, and clean water, while also supporting industries such as agriculture and tourism. Biodiversity also helps maintain environmental balance by regulating climate, preventing soil erosion, and ensuring pollination of crops. Now, next argument is broadly utilitarian arguments. Okay. Now, let's understand this. So, this broadly utilitarian argument basically focuses on the services provided by the ecosystem. So, basically, what is the focus? Fundamental ecosystem services that nature provides. What are these services? So, nature is providing us clean air, fresh water, food, and climate regulation also is done by the nature. And these are very essential for our survival and well being. Examples of the services provided by the nature. So, first one is the oxygen production. So, oxygen is produced by the plants by the process known as photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis done by the plants, okay, or the plants which are present in the forest like Amazon rainforest plays a key role in producing oxygen. Now, what happens in photosynthesis? In this process, the plant takes in carbon dioxide and water, and using sunlight, the glucose is formed and oxygen is released as a byproduct. So these inorganic compounds, carbon dioxide and water, they are converted into organic compound, which is glucose, and in this process, oxygen is also released. Now, the Amazon forest is estimated to produce about 20% of the Earth's atmospheric oxygen. Next one is pollination. The pollination is the process by which pollen is transferred to the female part of the another flower. And this enables fertilization and the production of seeds. So in nature, this process is carried out by the pollinators such as bees, bumblebees, birds, and bats as well. So these pollinators help in moving pollen from one flower to another, while these pollinators, they feed on the nectar or pollen. Okay, so these pollinators, they are in the search of nectar and pollen. So when they sit on the plant, Okay, when they sit on the flower for sucking the nectar or for eating these pollen, in this process, they also pollinate the flower. And without them, you can't have fruit or seeds. So only after fertilization, after pollination, what will happen? Fertilization. After fertilization, there will be fruits and seeds set. Next one is aesthetic pleasures. So this refers to the joy and relaxation people get from natural beauty, like watching birds, enjoying spring flowers, or going on a hike. So these are all the aesthetic pleasure. Okay. So this comes under the recreational benefits of the nature. Now, nature is also doing the climate regulation and nutrient cycling as well. So climate regulation and nutrient cycling are essential ecological processes that maintain the balance of Earth's environment. Climate regulation involves the atmosphere's role in controlling temperature and weather patterns, which is crucial for sustaining life. Nutrient cycling, on the other hand, refers to the movement and recycling of nutrients like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus through different ecosystems, ensuring that essential elements are available for living organisms. Okay, so we have talked about the narrow utilitarian, broadly utilitarian, and the third one was the ethical argument. So, what does ethical argument mean? So, ethical argument for biodiversity conservation focuses on our moral duty to protect the intrinsic value of all the living species. Okay, and also to preserve a healthy planet for the future generations as well. So, it is our moral duty to preserve this biodiversity. Okay, even if it is not beneficial to human, then also we have to preserve that species. Okay, so it is very important to protect the intrinsic value of all living species. All species are important. Okay, so this comes under the ethical argument. The next one, let's talk about how do we conserve biodiversity. Yeah, so first of all, let's talk about biodiversity conservation. Okay, so first of all, we should understand what is biodiversity. So basically, biodiversity refers to the variety of life present on the earth. Okay, it is the number and type of species present on the earth. Okay, including different species of plants, animals, and microorganisms. Okay, then we should understand what is the importance of biodiversity. So biodiversity is important because it ensures a variety of plant, animal, and microorganisms. They live together in an ecosystem, which help maintain balance and support life on the earth. Okay, so it is very important to conserve biodiversity. Okay, it provides essential resources like food, medicine, and clean air, as well as water. Ecosystem is also this nature is also providing, or biodiversity is also providing, okay, a lot of services. Okay, ecosystem services, they are called ecosystem services, such as pollination, climate regulation. Next one, you should also know the current threats to the biodiversity. Okay, this include habitat destruction due to deforestation, urbanization. Okay, clear? So it is very important to know the current threats to the biodiversity. Pollution is also a threat to biodiversity. So basically, human activities, okay, lead to, you can say, loss of biodiversity. Then there are other causes also. Now, then conservation is a key solution to protect biodiversity. So, how can we conserve biodiversity? So you can see, first of all, if we want to conserve the biodiversity, then we should understand what is biodiversity, what is the importance of biodiversity, what are the threats of the biodiversity, then you should plan some strategies for the conservation of the biodiversity. Now, basically, there are two main approaches for conservation of biodiversity: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Okay, now let's talk about some of the conservational strategies. Okay, so two strategies are in situ and ex situ conservation strategies. Okay, so in situ means on-site conservation and ex situ means off-site conservation. So in situ conservation, okay, it protects the species in their natural habitat. Okay, this is the best strategy for the conservation of biodiversity as a whole, because you are conserving the biodiversity at their natural habitat. Examples are biodiversity hotspots, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, and sacred groves. Then next one is ex situ conservation. Okay, so ex situ conservation, on the other hand, saves threatened species outside their natural habitat. Okay, that's why it is known as off-site conservation or ex situ. So here you protect the threatened animals and plants outside their natural habitat. Examples are zoological parks, botanical gardens, wildlife safari parks, cryopreservation, and seed banks. Let's talk about the in situ conservation. First, let's talk about this in detail. So within this, we have biodiversity hotspots. Okay, this is a kind of in situ conservation method. So biodiversity hotspots are area with a very large number of different species and many species that are found only in that specific region. Means endemic species, they are not found anywhere else in the world. So these regions are very important because they have a high number of unique species, making them crucial for conservation efforts. Okay, so biodiversity hotspots. What are the concepts? So these are the region with very high level of species richness and high degree of endemism also. And then what do you mean by endemism? So endemic species is a species confined to that particular region and this species is not found anywhere else. Now, what is the criteria for a biodiversity hotspot? So biodiversity hotspot should have more than 1500 species of vascular plants as endemics and have lost at least 70% of its original habitat. Okay. So what is the criteria for a habitat or a place to be called as biodiversity hotspot? So first of all, it should have endemic species, because these species should not be found anywhere else. And also, okay, it is experiencing or it has experienced at least 70% loss of the original habitat, then it is considered as a biodiversity hotspot. Okay, so in these biodiversity hotspots, there is a loss of biodiversity is also occurring here. Okay, so it has experienced at least 70% loss of the original habitat or the species. Initially 25 biodiversity spots were known. Now there are 34 biodiversity hotspots in the world. Now India's biodiversity hotspots includes, first one is the Western Ghats as well as Sri Lanka. Okay, next one is the Indo-Burma region. Okay. And the third one is the Himalayas. Now, what are the significance of these biodiversity hotspots? So although these hotspots cover less than 2% of the Earth's land area, they are home to an extraordinary amount of biodiversity, containing a large percentage of world's species. Okay, so this makes them critically important for conservational efforts. Now, next one. Now, the protection of biodiversity hotspots can reduce the ongoing mass extinction by almost 30%. Okay. So it can reduce the ongoing mass extinctions by almost 30%. So what does this mean? This means that if we protect certain species or their habitat, it might help to prevent the loss of about 30% of the species that are currently at risk of extinction. Okay. Let's talk about protected areas in India. So first one are biosphere reserve. So what is biosphere reserve? The biosphere reserves are protected areas that aim to conserve biodiversity and promote sustainable development. Now, there are 18 such reserves in India, which serves as living laboratories for testing and demonstrating sustainable methods of resource use, while also protecting the unique ecosystem and cultural heritage of the regions they cover. Next one are national parks. So what are national parks? National parks in India are protected areas that conserve the natural environment, including flora and fauna and ecosystems, and are managed to ensure their sustainability for future generations. As per the data, there are 104 and 104 national parks in the country, which play a crucial role in preserving biodiversity, protecting endangered species, and maintaining ecological balance. And these parks were established under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Next one are the wildlife sanctuaries. So these are the protected areas where wild animals live in their natural habitat and human activities like hunting or poaching are strictly prohibited to ensure the safety and conservation of wildlife. And these sanctuaries are established under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and play a crucial role in preserving biodiversity and maintaining ecological balance. As of now, there are 566 wildlife sanctuaries in India, which help in protecting various species of animal, birds, and plants from extinction. So let's understand what are sacred groves. So sacred groves, also sometimes known as sacred forest. Okay, so they are forested area produced by local communities due to its religious, cultural, and ecological significance. Okay, now these sacred groves often have deep spiritual connections. Okay, they are dedicated to deities or gods or spirits or ancestors, and they serve as important sites for ritual and worship. Now, they are very important for biodiversity conservation. Okay, here a lot of threatened species are also present, and they are also very important for maintaining the ecological balance. Okay, this is clear. So basically, sacred groves, they are the protected areas by local communities. Okay, due to its religious, cultural, and ecological significance. Okay, now you can see clear. So here you can see this is a traditional form of community-based conservation, sacred groves. They are traditional form of community-based conservation. Okay, means it is protected by the local communities. Now, what are the examples? Okay, first one is the Khasi and the Jantia Hills in Meghalaya. Okay, so these are the parts of the northeastern region of India and are known for the unique geographical features and rich biodiversity. Next example is Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan. Next one is Western Ghat regions of Karnataka and Maharashtra. So these areas are known for the rich biodiversity and are considered one of the world's 8 hotspots of ecological importance. They support a wide variety of flora and fauna, including many endemic species found nowhere else on the world. Okay, now Sarguja, Chanda, and Bastar are regions in Madhya Pradesh known for their rich biodiversity and tribal culture. These areas are part of the central Indian highlands and are characterized by dense forests, diverse flora and fauna, and unique tribal communities. Okay, clear? So, here in these sacred groves, the wildlife, they are protected, they are worshipped also, and the wildlife is given total protection by the local communities. Okay, so you can see we have studied in the description. The wildlife within are venerated and given total protection. Now, in Meghalaya, sacred groves are special areas of forest that are protected by local people because of their religious or cultural significance. Okay, in Meghalaya, the sacred groves are the last refuge for a large number of rare and threatened plants. So, these sacred groves consist of a lot of threatened and endemic plants as well. Let's talk about the ex situ conservation. It refers to the protection of the species outside their natural habitat. So zoological parks, botanical gardens, and wildlife safari parks are special places created to protect and study animals and plants. Zoological parks, it preserve different animals in enclosures, while botanical gardens have a variety of plant species for education and conservation. Wildlife safari parks allow visitors to view animals in more natural settings, helping to preserve their habitat and promote awareness about wildlife conservation. Now, what is the purpose? Now, purpose is to protect endangered species and giving them a safe place to live and thrive under human care, which helps in their survival and recovery. Now, what are the recent trends for conserving biodiversity? So, zoos are now doing more than just showing animals to visitors. Okay, they are actively helping to save endangered species by participating in breeding programs as well. These programs aim to increase the number of animals in captivity so that they can be released back into the wild or help prevent their extinction. So now zoos, they are also involved or they are also participating in the breeding programs for threatened species. Okay, now these species can later be introduced into the wild. So the threatened species can be, you can say, saved from extinction by carrying out these breeding programs, and then they are later again introduced into the wild. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the cryopreservation now. So it is a technique used to keep living cells or tissues or even embryos alive at very low temperature, usually around minus 196 degrees Celsius, using liquid nitrogen. So by this method, you can preserve the biological materials for long periods without damaging them. Okay, so how can you define cryopreservation? So this process involves keeping the reproductive cells such as gametes of endangered species alive and healthy for a long time so that they can be used later to help increase their population and prevent them from becoming extinct. Okay, so it is the preservation of gametes of threatened species in viable and fertile conditions for long periods. What is the technique of cryopreservation? So here the biological materials are stored at very low temperature, around minus 190 degrees Celsius, 196 degrees Celsius in liquid nitrogen. Now this extreme cold temperature stops all the metabolic activities inside that cell, preventing damage and spoilage. So it increases the viability. Okay, so it is commonly used to preserve biological materials such as plant cells, animal cells, and even embryos, ensuring they remain viable for future use in research or medical applications. Now, the application of preserving gametes, eggs, and embryos is important in biology, especially for reproductive health and conservation. Okay, so gametes, they can be frozen, they can be stored for future use in assisted reproductive technologies also, like in vitro fertilization. Similarly, embryos can also be preserved, allowing for later implantation. Okay, so this helps in preserving genetic diversity in endangered species as well. Okay, next are the seed banks. So they are special collection of seeds that are stored under controlled conditions to preserve plant diversity. Now, purpose of seed bank is to store seeds of various genetically diverse strains of important crops for a long time, ensuring their preservation and availability to for future agriculture use. So here the seeds are stored in cool, dry places to keep them alive and able to grow into later plants. Okay. Low temperature basically slows down the chemical processes inside the seed, preventing it from dying too soon. So it is again increasing the viability. Okay. Now low humidity. It also stops the seed from getting too wet, which can make it rot. Okay. So low temperature and low humidity is maintained. Okay. So this method helps preserve the seed's ability to germinate for a longer time. Means its viability is maintained. What is the significance of XC2 conservation? Let's understand this. So, it is a crucial backup for species that are critically endangered or extinct in the wild. Okay. Now, this strategy or method serves as a final option for ensuring the survival of a species and offers a chance for its possible reintroduction into the wild. Let's talk about some of the global efforts in biodiversity conservation. Now, biodiversity crosses political boundaries because many species and ecosystem exist beyond the borders of any single country, making it a global issue that requires international cooperation for its protection and management. Collective responsibility of all nations means that every country has a shared duty to protect the environment and ensure sustainable development. So this means that no single nation can solve environmental issue alone, and global cooperation is essential to address challenges like climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss, ensuring a healthy planet for future generations. In 1992, Convention on Biological Diversity, also known as Earth Summit, was a major international agreement aimed at protecting Earth's diverse living organisms and their habitat. It was held in Rio de Janeiro and brought together countries to address the loss of biodiversity and to promote sustainable use of natural resources, and also to ensure fair sharing of benefits from genetic resources. Now, this convention led to the creation of Convention of Biodiversity, which sets global goals for conserving biodiversity. Now, calls for measure on biodiversity conservation. This highlights the importance of protecting the variety of life on Earth. Okay. Now, in 2002, world leaders promised to reduce the loss of biodiversity by 2010. Okay. As part of the World Summit on Sustainable Development, this pledge aimed to protect Earth's variety of life, including plants, animals, and ecosystem, which are essential for maintaining ecological balance and supporting human life. However, the goal was not fully met. However, the challenges in conserving biodiversity and the need for continued efforts to protect our natural world. Okay, so there is a need for continued efforts for protecting our natural world. Okay, now let's summarize this entire session. Now, today we talked about the impact of human activity on biodiversity, especially focusing on the extinction of species over the past 500 years. Species like dodo and thylacine, they have disappeared. Okay. Now, the sixth extinction refers to the current rapid loss of species happening 100 to 1,000 times faster than the natural rate before humans influence the environment. We also talk about the major cause of biodiversity loss. So these are habitat loss, overexploitation, alien species invasion, and co-extinction as well. Okay, now biodiversity loss can lead to reduced plant productivity, decrease ecosystem resilience, and increase ecosystem variability. Okay, now conservation of biodiversity can be categorized into utilitarian and ethical argument. So we talked about the narrow utilitarian as well as the broad utilitarian as well as the ethical argument. Okay, clear? So narrow utilitarian focuses on the economic benefits that we get from the nature. Broad utilitarian focuses on the ecosystem services. And then ethical argument focuses on our moral duty to preserve the biodiversity. Okay. Now, there are two strategies for conservation of the biodiversity: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ conservation focuses on protecting species and their natural habitats by preserving the entire ecosystem. Okay, so in situ conservation also means on-site conservation, means you are conserving the biodiversity in its natural habitat. Examples are biodiversity hotspots, okay, sacred groves, then biosphere reserves, natural parks. Then next one is ex situ conservation. This is the method used to protect species by keeping them away from their natural habitat, such as in zoos, botanical gardens, and seed banks. Okay, clear? Now you can see this ex situ conservation is the kind of backup for the preservation of the threatened species. Okay. Now, ex situ conservation includes methods like cryopreservation, in vitro fertilization, tissue cultures. Global efforts are also okay. We also talk about the global efforts for conserving biodiversity, like the Earth Summit and the World Summit on Sustainable Development. This shows how countries work together to protect the environment and manage resources wisely. Now let's discuss some NCERT based questions. The first question is: the Amazon rainforest is referred to as the lungs of the planet because it produces approximately what percentage of Earth's oxygen? What are the options? 10%, 20%, 25%, or 50%? What is the correct answer? The option number 20% is the correct answer. Let's have a look at the explanation. So, oxygen produced by Amazon rainforest. So, Amazon rainforest is widely recognized for a significant contribution to global oxygen levels. What is the percentage of Earth's oxygen produced by Amazon forest? So, the Amazon rainforest produces about 20% of the Earth's oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. Okay. This makes the Amazon a vital part of the Earth's atmosphere, helping to maintain the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is essential for life on Earth. Next question is: ex situ conservation methods include all of the following except. First one is natural park, second is zoological park, third is botanical garden, and fourth is cryopreservation. Okay. So ex situ conservation method include all of the following except national parks. This is the correct answer. Now, ex situ conservation refers to the practice of protecting and preserving species in environments that are not their natural habitat, such as zoo, botanical garden, etc. Okay, means it involves the conservation of the species away from its natural habitat. National parks, they are special areas protected to conserve nature and wildlife. They are the part of in situ conservation, which means protecting the species in their natural habitat. Zoological park, botanical garden, cryopreservation are examples of ex situ conservation. Okay, where the species, they are kept outside of their natural habitat in controlled environments. And examples we have already seen: zoos, botanical garden, or specialized facilities for storing the genetic material like cryopreservation and the seed banks. Next question: explain the significance of biodiversity hotspots and their role in conservation efforts. Let's have a look at the answer. Now, biodiversity hotspots are areas with a very large number of different species living in a small area, and many of these species are found only there, meaning they are unique to that region. They are endemic species. And biodiversity hotspot, they are also undergoing, you can say, loss of biodiversity. Okay, so almost 70% of the biodiversity has been lost in these hotspots. Okay, so these biodiversity hotspot consist of, you can say, unique species. Okay, so these species are only present in these areas. Okay. Now, these biodiversity hotspots, they should be conserved because of their significant role in preserving biological biodiversity. Now, these biological hotspots, they cover less than 2% of the Earth's land area, but they are home to a large proportion of world's biological diversity. Protecting these areas can significantly reduce ongoing mass extinction by nearly 30%. Okay. Now, given limited conservation resources, focusing efforts on these hotspots allow for more effective biodiversity preservation. So there is a need to conserve these biodiversity hotspots as well. They are rich in biodiversity, but they are also losing the biodiversity at a very high rate. Next question: describe the various methods used in ex-situ conservation and their importance. Let's have a look at the answer. See, ex-situ conservation means protection of the species, conserving the species outside their natural habitat. Okay, means maintenance of animals in zoological parks and maintenance of plants in botanical gardens. What are the recent advancement? The recent advancement include cryopreservation. Okay, so here the eggs or the sperms of the endangered animals are frozen and stored at very low temperature to preserve them for future use. Helping in breeding programs to save these species from extinction. In vitro fertilization of the eggs. It is a process where egg is fertilized by sperm outside the body, usually in the laboratory settings, and then the resulting embryo is transferred back into the woman's uterus to continue the development. Okay. So here the eggs can also be preserved. Okay, embryos can also be preserved at very low temperature. Next one is propagation of plant through tissue culture methods. So tissue culture is a method used to grow plants from small pieces of their tissues, known as the explant, under controlled laboratory conditions. So this technique allows scientists to produce many identical plants quickly. Okay, clear? Now this method can also be used for preserving rare species. Now next one are seed banks. They are special storage places where seed from different plant varieties are kept for a long time to preserve their genetic diversity. So this also helps in protecting rare or endangered plant species and ensure that their genes are available for future use. So these methods are essential for, first of all, safeguarding the genetic diversity. So they help preserve the variety of genes within a species. Next one is facilitating species recovery and restoration. Okay, what do you mean by this? So this refers to the efforts made to help endangered or extinct species return to their natural habitat and thrive again, which is an important part of conservation strategy. Okay, so this involves activities like protecting habitats, controlling threats such as pollution and poaching, and reintroducing species into the wild and monitoring their progress. Now, the third one is the especially important for species that are extinct in the wild. So species that are no longer found in their natural habitats and are only maintained in captivity, such as zoos or breeding centers. Okay, clear? So it is very important for the species that are extinct in the wild as well. Okay, so we can prevent the extinction of these species. Okay, so some of the species they have gone extinct, but we have preserved their gametes. We have preserved their, you can say, embryos or the gametes, eggs and the sperm. Okay, we can also preserve the seeds in the seed banks. So they might go extinct, or some of them might have gone extinct, or there is a chance they might get extinct in future. So we have already stored their seeds or the embryos or the gametes at very low temperature, and then again they can be used in the future. So we are maintaining the genetic diversity by doing this. Okay, we can also recover the species, and we can also restore threatened species. Now let's discuss some keynotes. So we talked about the biodiversity hotspots here. The biodiversity hotspot have high species richness and endemism, and they are targeted for maximum protection. There are 34 global biodiversity hotspots crucial for reducing mass extinction. So if we preserve biodiversity hotspot, we can reduce the mass extinction by 30%. India has 14 biosphere reserves, 19 national parks, and 448 wildlife sanctuaries for biodiversity conservation. Now, sacred groves in India, like those in Meghalaya and Rajasthan, are vital for preserving rare species. In zoological park, botanical gardens, and wildlife safari parks are examples of XC2 conservation. And then advanced XC2 methods include cryopreservation, in vitro fertilization, okay, as well as tissue culture as well, through which we can conserve rare plant species. Because by tissue culture, we can, you can say, produce the plants in a very short period of time. And these plants are genetically similar to the parents. Seed bank, they store genetic strains of important plants for long-term conservation. Okay. Now, biodiversity conservation requires international cooperation as well, transcending political boundaries. The Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 emphasized global biodiversity conservation and sustainable use. Now, there are some interesting questions for you. First question is, assess the effectiveness of biodiversity hotspot as a strategy for conserving global biodiversity. And what criteria would you use to measure their success? And how might their effectiveness vary in different regions? Now, next one is evaluate the role of traditional knowledge and cultural practices in biodiversity conservation. And how can such practices be integrated into modern conservation efforts, and what challenges might arise? Okay, so this was the end of the theory. Now let's discuss the DPP related to this topic. First question is, which of the following is not a category of reasons for conserving biodiversity as mentioned in the text that we have studied? So first one is narrow utilitarian, broad utilitarian, economical, utilitarian, and ethical. So what will be the correct answer? Okay, option number C is the correct answer here. So basically, the reasons for conserving biodiversity, they have been characterized into these groups. Okay, what are these groups? Narrow utilitarian, broadly utilitarian, and ethical. So here, economically and utilitarian, this is not a category of reasons of conserving biodiversity. So this is the correct answer here. Next one, what percentage of Earth's land area do all biodiversity hotspots cover collectively? So options are less than 2%, approximately 5%, around 10%, and next one is over 15%. What will be the correct answer? Okay, so here the correct answer will be Option number A, less than 20%. Here, so these biodiversity hotspots, they cover less than 20%, but still they are very important and they should be conserved. Okay, these biodiversity hotspots, they are rich in endemic species. They have a lot of species richness. Okay, and if we conserve biodiversity hotspot, we can stop or we can reduce the mass extinction by 30%. Next one, which Indian state is associated with sacred groves in Khasi and Jaintia Hills? Options are Karnataka, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. What will be the correct answer? Here, option number B is the correct answer. Here, Meghalaya. So this was called straightforward question here. Next one, what is the primary purpose of XC2 conservation? Okay, options are protecting entire ecosystem, preserving threatened species outside their natural habitat, establishing biodiversity hotspot, and promoting sustainable developmental goals. What is the correct answer? So option number B will be the correct answer here, preserving threatened species outside their natural habitat. Okay, so here the species, they are protected away from the natural habitat. Examples are zoos, botanical gardens. Next one, how many biodiversity hotspots are currently recognized worldwide? So options are 25, 34, 14, and 19. What is the correct answer? Again, it's a very straightforward question. Answer will be 34. Biodiversity hotspots are currently recognized worldwide. Okay, so with this, we have discussed the DPP as well. So all our questions are correct. Okay, so with this, we end the session. I hope the session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.